Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg Srisavasdi over at Cinemaddicts. Here's my introduction for, it's not mine, this is Eric Holmes' episode. A lot of these feeds will be Eric Holmes centric since he does pretty much most of the interviews for our Cinemaddicts community, for our world whatsoever. Thanks again to Eric Holmes for this. Now, for this episode specifically, we have Hat Riot. It's a new documentary from director, producer, writer Marc Levin and author, co-producer David Paul Kuhn. Okay, and Hat Riot, here's an official synopsis. Quote, revisit New York in 1970 when student protesters against the Vietnam War violently clashed with construction workers, ushering in a new political and cultural divide that would redefine the American political landscape. I will leave the actual website where you can check out more information on Hat Riot, as well as, here's a premiere. I'm recording this Tuesday morning, September 30th. Hat Riot premieres Tuesday, September 30th, tonight, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Check your local listings. If you are not an old schooler like me and have your television in front of your face, you can also check it out on pbs.org and the PBS app. So I'm still an old schooler. I do watch television, but lately I've been watching a lot of my stuff on the iPad. But so yeah, if you don't have a big television in front of your face or whatnot, check out pbs.org and the PBS app for Hat Riot from Marc Levin and David Paul Kuhn. Eric Holmes' interview will be up in a few moments. Just wanted to add that a lot of the weekly Cinemaddicts podcast feed will have Eric Holmes' interviews. I will also sprinkle some of my interviews as well on the Cinemaddicts feed. Between me and him, we just do a ton of interviews a week, and I actually haven't been uploading a lot of them on our podcast feeds, which is Cinemaddicts and Find Your Film. Okay, so our main episode each week will be our review episode, which is me, Eric, and Bruce reviewing a lot of the movies that are coming out every Friday via theaters or digital. A lot of our coverage is independent film centric, but you're going to get more interview material on our Cinemaddicts podcast feed. Thanks primarily to Eric Holmes for all of his interviews. And hopefully you'll get some more TV coverage as well from Cinemaddicts. It'll give you hopefully some interesting viewing options on a given week. Specifically, I'm glad that I get to actually not be lazy and start uploading more stuff. Okay, especially here's an example, Hat Riot, which it's not coming out on a Friday, it's coming out on a Tuesday, and you can watch it on PBS. That's the first set of interviews for this episode. The second will be an interview with Jeremy Ray Taylor. He is the co-star of the movie, the Josh Duhamel headline film, London Calling. More on that later, okay, in a few moments. But let's focus in right now with Marc Levin, David Paul Kuhn for Hat Riot, interview conducted by the great Eric Holmes. Check it out.
Mark, David, how's it going?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. I'm here with David Paul Kuhn and Marc Levin, director and the author and producers of Hat Riot. I guess this documentary is dense. This has a bunch in it. What was it like cutting through footage and figuring out what to put in and what to leave, or what to leave out?
That was, I would say, the big filmmaking challenge is we wanted to create the sense of you living through this historic week. David, what's the quote about the week?
So I mean, I'm going to paraphrase the New Yorker, but basically certainly the most tumultuous periods in more than a century. So to give perspective to that, this is 2 years after 1968. This is after RFK was assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated. This is after Chicago happened. So for the New Yorker to feel that way at that time, it captures why this week becomes a microcosm for our story. It was so important and telling.
And my point was that we wanted you to feel immersed in that week, what it was like to live through that week, from Nixon's escalation of the war into Cambodia to the colleges around the country going on strike, to the tragedy of 4 students being shot at Kent State, to finally this confrontation on the streets of downtown Manhattan. Yet, as David just mentioned, what happened in 68 helped inform everything that was to happen this week. What was happening in Vietnam, what was happening in the lives and the neighborhoods of the characters, especially the hard hat characters in our film. So that was the challenge, how to weave all that in, but not lose that momentum. David just mentioned Chicago 68. You asked, what's left out? Well, there's one thing right there. It's in David's book and it's important, but we just couldn't fit it in. So there are a number of things, but I think that was the real challenge of the film, was to get as much context. Who was John Lindsay? What was happening in New York City? How its economy was changing? How crime was impacting things? How the lives and the neighborhoods that so many of the Italian and Irish immigrants moved into, how all that was happening, but weave it into this week and not lose that thread.
I think that's important too, because like a lot of documentaries, they leave out certain context because they're trying to do one agenda or another. And like you say, when you put in the content, like obviously every cut's a lie, but when you're trying to do a documentary, you want to try to be as honest to the whole truth as possible. So like how do you guys, I don't know, what would be the mission statement when doing stuff like this?
That is a good question. I think it's years of experience. I mean, obviously David spent years researching, so we had a tremendous help in somebody who was steeped in this, who knew the history, had examined the primary sources. But in the end, yeah, you got to rely on your own sensibility of what's balanced, what's fair. I mean, we did have a minor conflict that now is out in the public that, we could talk about. The final shot of the film, we thought was important. It's in David's book. In the afterword, Ronald Reagan's campaign stop in New York, September 1980, where he ended his speech saying, "Make America Great Again." I had never seen that clip, and I read about it in David's book, found the clip. It's not in the version you saw. It's in the festival version, and that was an issue with American Experience, which is a great, group of people, and it's an incredible history, 40-year history, but they felt that was not necessarily appropriate to put at the end of the film. We felt it was a way to close the loop and the echoes to, that reverberate right to today. So it's a constant dialogue back and forth between us as the filmmakers, the executives of American Experience. And we do show rough cuts sometimes to small groups of people to get to see how is it playing, how are they reacting. I mean, one reaction, and David, I don't know if you were there, but, there was some pushback we got at one point midway where they felt we were too unfair to the anti-war movement, to the student movement, to the protest movement, which I found interesting because obviously that was the world I was from and part of back in the 60s and early 70s.
And I think there's going to be that reaction because the story of the 60s and 70s has been told almost entirely from the student counterculture perspective. They're the heroes, they're the protagonists. And one of the many missions of my book was to show that while along the way of all these righteous struggles to better America, mistakes happen. Some of those mistakes are being relived to this day. And if we don't also learn from the hard lessons of history along the way to perhaps the victories, unfortunately, history does repeat. And, to paraphrase Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And the mission of the book and eventually this film is to return to a very troubled time, a more troubled time than our own. And with the distance that history allows, perhaps strike the beginning of empathy that can perhaps help us cross certain divides today.
Yeah, watching that ride towards the end, or like just everything just went chaos. It was like you said, we're not there yet, but you can kind of see us kind of heading down that path, and it's kind of scary. And yeah, history shouldn't repeat itself, but we're humans. We're stupid. That's what we do. But
got to be better versions of that. That's all we can do.
Yeah. But you said you got some pushback. I think that it's weird to say, but that's almost a compliment for something like this. Because if you're trying to present all sides fairly, that's got to be, and then to get pushback on something that you agree with, that's got to be kind of a thing to say that, hey, I must be on the right path here.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I think that as David's made the point, the story of the counterculture and that era had ignored this side of the story. And to David's credit, he dug deep. Certainly, I knew about the event, but until I read his book, I didn't realize the significance of the event. Again, I was a 19-year-old kid who was obsessed with the Knicks winning the NBA championship and working on a film about the Rolling Stones in the end of the 60s. So I was lost in my own bubble. But the significance is just so relevant to today's discussions. And I think part of the myopia is not just listening to the stories of others who you don't agree with, but also we focus on the economic issues, which are absolutely fundamental. And David makes the point in the film that 1973 really was the peak earnings relative to the increased wealth in the United States of the construction workers. They haven't made progress since then like they had up to that point. But it's the cultural side of the equation that Nixon and then Reagan were able to realize, to speak to connect with in a real, just human way that is very, very powerful and can't be. And so I think that is especially important as we face the ongoing partisan crises that we're living with today. Even you mentioned, look, when we saw the film 2 nights ago at the premiere, I hadn't even thought about the Charlie Kirk tragedy and all the arguments going on about whether the flag should be at half-mast or at full-mast. And then watching the film again, there was the same argument going on at City Hall over whether the flag should be at half-mast or full-mast for the 4 students that were killed by the National Guard at Kent State, except the roles were reversed.
Yeah, I mean, and that speaks to one of the challenges of filmmaking, and certainly the book. This is something that can be much more easily done in a book. But for making the film, we had to somehow get across very briefly that the flag burning then was much more shocking than it is now. We kind of grew up in an era where it's just, we've had these debates for a half century, but at that time it had only just begun. And for World War II veterans, for Korean veterans, for Vietnam veterans, it was shocking. And to quickly translate that and why it felt personal to them and why they had their own sense of standing up for those who could not stand up for themselves. Because when that flag's burned, to them, they're seeing their dead comrades from war. So to convey what this other side also had their sense of a righteous cause, and to try to translate that very quickly in film, that's one of the challenges, and we hope it succeeds.
Yeah. Well, this was a really great documentary. Hat Riot will, I believe, premiere Tuesday, September 30th at 9 o'clock on PBS. And it's on the American Experience. What's that? I'm sorry. What's the American Experience? Is that the
That's
umbrella?
The Institution of America. They've been around for roughly 4 decades out of Boston, and it's pretty much the gold standard in historical documentaries. They're having funding issues, and it may be canceled. It is as of now. And so it's a part of American Experience, aired nationally on PBS on September 30th.
Okay. Well, Marc, David, thanks for joining me, and congratulations on the documentary.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm back. London Calling. London Calling. This is an interview that Eric Holmes conducted with co-star Jeremy Ray Taylor a couple of weeks ago. I'm late on actually putting this on the podcast feed. It came out September 19th in theaters, London Calling. As of this recording, again, it's September 30th. I looked on Fandango at home. It's currently playing in Albuquerque. So I did get this way past the deadline. But if you are somewhere in Albuquerque at an AMC and you see London Calling, go see it. It's a very fun movie. Both Eric Holmes and I enjoyed this film. We reviewed it a couple of episodes prior over at Cinemaddicts, and we both gave it a very positive review. Directed by Alan Unger, starring Josh Duhamel and Jeremy Ray Taylor and Rick Hoffman and Aidan Gillen. Here's a plot synopsis. Quote, after fleeing the UK from a job gone wrong, a down-on-his-luck hitman is forced to babysit the son of his new crime boss and show him how to become a man. The movie is rated R. The runtime is 114 minutes. Josh Duhamel is the hitman who left UK and is now living in Los Angeles, working for a crime boss played by Rick Hoffman. The crime boss's son is named, what is his name? I don't have it on IMDb, but Jeremy Ray Taylor plays the crime boss's son. And these two, the hitman and the crime boss's son, they are forced to bond together as the hitman, again played by Josh Duhamel, has to teach Jeremy Ray Taylor's character how to become a criminal or hitman. It sounds dark, but there is violence, right? There are killings, but it's mainly a buddy comedy. So it's an interesting mix where you see people getting killed, but it's very humorous. It's action comedy, directed by Alan Unger. I mean this in the best way. It's a nice cheeseburger to digest. I enjoyed my experience. Same with Eric Holmes. And just from memory, the third act is really well done as well on an action level. And Aidan Gillen, who you might know him from The Wire. I think was he in The Dark Knight Rises, I believe? He was at the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises, and he's a very good actor. You've seen him in a million things. He plays the UK mob boss who comes to LA on a vendetta revenge streak against a Josh Duhamel character. The Jeremy Ray Taylor interview with Eric Holmes is just about close to 7 minutes. Very quick, short and quick, but it's very engaging. Jeremy Ray Taylor, along with being an actor, he is also a car enthusiast as well. But yeah, London Calling, a lot of you might not be able to see it in theaters because I could be wrong, but I checked at Fandango at home, currently playing in Albuquerque theaters at the AMC, but it will be on digital, I'm assuming, right around the corner. So here is Eric Holmes' interview with Jeremy Ray Taylor. And after the Taylor interview, if you can, stay a few moments for my very quick plug on Cinemaddicts. Thanks again, guys. And here's Jeremy Ray Taylor.
I hope I'm recording. I'll cross my fingers and hope for the best. I'm here with Jeremy Ray Taylor, star of London Calling. I think people probably know you best from it or Goosebumps, but I gotta say, really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It had this movie's got a very specific comedic tone to it, and that's the a-hole, but the funny a-hole. And everyone in this movie kind of seems to be making the same movie. Or like when you get together in an ensemble like this, what kind of goes on with that? Because obviously, like, you'll read the script and you'll have your own way you get into the character, but for all the characters to kind of mesh in the same way, how does that work?
Yeah, I think that Alan just had a really good time casting everyone, and I think that he nailed it. And so I think that's a great point, that every actor comes with their own idea of what the story needs to go like, or how the line needs to be delivered. And definitely everybody agreed. I didn't even think about that. That's such a great point. And so, yeah, I think that Alan and Josh were very collaborative. And so we all got to discuss exactly what would go down in each scene, because some things that make sense on paper don't necessarily make sense when you're actually acting them out. And so, yeah, everybody was very collaborative and open to getting it done. And I think it's such a great story to tell, and it was written so well that nobody could disagree.
Yeah, and yours and Josh's chemistry in this is through the roof, and yours and Rick Hoffman, who plays your dad, is the exact opposite of that, but also in a pretty interesting way. What was it like working with those two dynamics?
Yeah, absolutely. Working with Rick was really, really interesting. He has a very unique comedy style, so I had to learn how to cater to that a little bit. He's very, very fast, and so that was something that was new to me. And working with Josh was absolutely incredible. People keep asking about like our chemistry and what we did off camera to build that, but nothing. I mean, Josh is just an amazing guy, and it just clicked. And as soon as we met each other, it just worked. And we had some really great conversations before Iver even was attached, and we both had the same goal with it. So it just worked out great.
Yeah, well, you mentioned like Rick kind of fast, which makes sense watching it, but I'm not an actor, so like what I guess from an actor's perspective, what's that like, the challenges, or maybe it makes it easier. I don't know, but what's that like?
I think when it's very quick, you definitely have to know your lines is the thing, right? You know, there's sometimes a buffer between lines, and you have times to think about exactly what you're going to say. Not with Rick. He wants you on the very tail of his line just to get that out. And so that was interesting. And although it was a challenge, it was cool. And I'm always open to learning from very seasoned actors, which Aidan Gillen, Rick, and Josh are all of that for sure. So it was an honor, and it was very a great experience.
Yeah, and you've been at this acting thing for quite a while, pretty young age. So this kind of weird question, but normally I would ask like what kind of tools you picked up, like what could you do like in London Calling, for instance, that you couldn't do in like Ant-Man, like
Right.
the Jeremy Ray Taylor and Ant-Man like couldn't do. But I
Right.
guess that kind of makes sense because you were so much younger then. But what's it like growing up within this business and in this craft?
Yeah, I think that this movie gave me an opportunity to put what I've been practicing off camera a lot actually to work. And so it wasn't necessarily that I picked up anything from this. I think this was actually just like finally my chance to show off what I'm capable of and what I want to do with my career, and I want to step into the action comedy style more often, and this is what I want to do at the end of the day. And so yeah, I think it was less of things that I picked up on and more just kind of working with these seasoned actors and picking up on what they do.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of your career, looks like you got a directorial debut, Unarmed Divide, coming out.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that and what can I see? Because I'm very interested to see what you come through with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think that's like publicly released anywhere. I don't think that we were able to find a way to do that, but that was done by mine and my family's production company. It's called Sling and Stone. And yeah, Unarmed Divide was a short film about military and PTSD and transitioning back to home life. They say that whenever you start to write and direct, write what you know. And my whole family is very military oriented. My brother was in the military. My other brother was in the military. Both my grandfathers, all that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of what we wanted to do. And that film has a very deep place in my heart.
Is directing something you want to do more of in the future? Or was that a taste and was like, nope, I'm good. I tried it. We're moving on.
It's a little bit of both. It was definitely very different, obviously, and I did not act in Unarmed Divide at all. That was just directing for me, and it was definitely more of a challenge. And I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, for sure. I think that it is something that I would like to do, and I like producing, and I'm good at laying ideas out on the table, but fleshing them out fully is not my specialty. It's just kind of coming up with it and then sometimes executing it in front of the camera. And so yeah, I would love to direct at some point for sure, but I'm humble enough to know that I'm not good at it yet. So I'll have to take some time. I'm very happy with how Unarmed Divide turned out, obviously, and obviously you can do it better always the second time. But yes, directing is something that I would like to do in the future for sure.
Well, you got to dip your toe in it a bit and then maybe
Yeah.
ease into it later on. But London Calling will be in theaters on September 19th. It's an incredibly fun film. But before I let you go, I want to get a movie recommendation from you. Something that's either personal to you or something that you're like, this movie's really good and no one talks about it.
Man, I'm pretty shallow when it comes to my movie recommendations, but my favorite movie ever really just came out. It's called F1 with Brad Pitt. That was incredible. Super, super well executed. I'm a huge car enthusiast, so obviously that kind of worked for me. And then before F1 was Ford versus Ferrari. If you haven't checked that out, whether you're a car enthusiast or not, it's an incredible story. It tells a beautiful story of how kind of Shelby's collaboration with Ford went down, and it's a beautiful story. It's beautifully shot and it's beautifully told.
Yeah, I've not seen F1 yet, but Ford v Ferrari definitely ruined racing movies for me. It's like
Yeah.
every time we put out like Gran Turismo, Gran Turismo was great, but I was watching it the whole time. I'm like, I wish I was watching Ford v Ferrari.
Yep. Well, F1 hit for me for sure. I would definitely recommend that for sure.
Nice. Well, Jeremy, congratulations on the movie. It's really entertaining. Hope
Thank
everyone gets to see it. Especially, I can imagine this would go well in a packed theater. And yeah, congratulations. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey guys, one more thing. Just if you want to listen to these Cinematics episodes ad-free, please subscribe to our Cinematics YouTube channel. I post all our audio podcasts on the Cinematics YouTube channel, and all three of us, we are on a mission to get the Cinematics YouTube channel monetized. Currently, we have around 820-ish subs. We have to get to 1,000 subs on our YouTube channel, along with 4,000 hours, all that stuff to get to there. We're 44% of the way towards our listen and watch hours on our Cinematics YouTube channel. And again, we're probably only 180-ish subscribers away from reaching 1,000 subscribers. So that is one of our main goals regarding Cinematics, is to get monetized on that YouTube channel so we can get more cheeseburgers under that monetization scheme operation under YouTube. So thanks for your support on that. But for you guys, if you enjoy or find value in our Cinematics podcast, you'll be able to listen to it on your YouTube app on your phone or I don't know, your TV or whatever, iPad device, ad-free. So when you listen to YouTube, when you listen to Cinematics on the podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, those are monetized. There are some ads within these audio platforms, which again, I'm very thankful for. That's how we make our pennies. And I appreciate you guys listening to us on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platformer you use. But if you listen to us via our YouTube app, our YouTube channel on Cinematics, I will keep having those episodes ad-free. Even when we get monetized, I will not monetize those episodes. All right? So just a little bit of a no ad hack for you guys. Please subscribe to our Cinematics YouTube channel, and all of you who listen to it will not have to deal with any ads if you like listening to podcasts on YouTube, the audio version, that is. All right, guys, take care. And thanks for listening to Eric's interviews with Jeremy Ray Taylor, David Paul Kuhn, and Marc Levin. I believe it's David Paul Kuhn. Let me go back. Yes, David Paul Kuhn, Marc Levin from Hat Riot, and Jeremy Ray Taylor from London Calling. There will be a lot more interviews with Eric Holmes coming up. Again, thank you so much for supporting us here at Cinematics. If you see Hat Riot or check out London Calling, we'd love to hear what you guys think of these films. Hit us up via our Cinematics Facebook group or whatnot. All right, guys, take care.